The polished floor of the Galactic Concordance Hall shimmered like black glass under the soft glow of hovering light orbs. Representatives from over 200 civilizations stood or sat in their designated zones, each shaped to suit their biology. Some needed water tanks, others preferred high perches, and a few floated silently in anti-gravity bubbles. Among them, 3 humans stood out not for their appearance but for their stillness. Daniel Brooks adjusted the collar of his dark gray uniform, his jaw tight but his eyes calm. Beside him, Lena Foster tapped a small data pad with her thumb, reviewing last-minute notes, while Marcus Bell scanned the room with the quiet focus of a man who'd spent years reading silences more than speeches. Earth had only earned observer status 6 months earlier, after decades of effort. It wasn't full membership, just a seat at the edge of the great circular chamber with no vote, no voice in decisions, only the right to listen. But for humanity, it was a start. They had rebuilt after the resource wars, unified under a single planetary government, and poured every spare credit into space exploration, diplomacy, and quiet technological advancement. They weren't the strongest, fastest, or oldest species in the galaxy, but they were stubborn, and they had come this far. The session that day was meant to be routine, updates on interstellar trade routes, a dispute over asteroid mining rights near the Helios belt, and a proposal to expand the Concordance's peacekeeping fleet. Nothing that should have involved Earth directly. But then Korath Vex rose from the Varelian delegation. Korath was tall, his scaled skin the color of dried blood, with eyes like polished obsidian. His species had been spacefaring for over 10,000 years. They saw themselves as the guardians of galactic order, the keepers of wisdom, and the judges of who deserved a place among the stars. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. His voice, smooth and cold as liquid nitrogen, carried through the chamber without amplification. "Before we proceed," he began, "I must address a matter of growing concern. The recent inclusion of Sol 3 Earth into observer status has raised questions about the integrity of our standards." A ripple passed through the chamber. Some delegates shifted. Others leaned forward. "Let us be honest," Korath continued. "This species emerged from tribal warfare less than 3 centuries ago. They nearly destroyed their own world through greed and ignorance. They lack the philosophical maturity, the biological stability, and the historical depth required for true galactic citizenship. Granting them even a listening post risks diluting the Concordance's purpose. They are children playing with fire, not equals ready to share the hearth." Silence followed. Not the respectful kind, but the heavy, awkward kind that comes when an insult is dressed as reason. A few delegates nodded. The insectoid Zenthari clicked their mandibles in agreement. The aquatic Anthari sank lower in their tank as if embarrassed for humanity. Daniel didn't move. His hands stayed at his sides, but his knuckles whitened. Lena stopped tapping her datapad. Marcus closed his eyes for just a second as if gathering strength. None of them interrupted. Protocol forbade it. Observers could not speak unless invited. So they stood, absorbing the words like stones dropped into still water. When the session resumed, the trade routes were approved. The mining dispute was tabled. The peacekeeping fleet expansion passed with overwhelming support. Through it all, the humans remained silent, but inside something had shifted. Later, aboard the orbital station Horizon 7, the mood was different. No polished floors here, just steel corridors, blinking consoles, and the low hum of life support. In the Earth delegation's private briefing room, the air felt thick. General Olivia Ruiz stood near the viewport, arms crossed, her dark eyes fixed on the blue curve of Earth below. She hadn't been at the session. Military personnel weren't allowed in the main chamber, but she'd watched the feed. "That wasn't just an insult," she said quietly. "That was a challenge." Lena sat at the table, her fingers now flying across the datapad. "He's wrong about our history, but he's right about one thing. We're new. And new means unpredictable. To them, unpredictable means dangerous." Marcus paced slowly, his polished shoes clicking on the metal floor. "They don't fear our weapons. They fear our speed. We went from steam engines to quantum drives in 200 years. Most species take millennia to make that leap. To them, we're a spark in a dry forest." Daniel finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "They think we'll beg for their approval, or lash out in anger. Either way, they expect us to react like children." Olivia turned from the window. "So what do we do?" Daniel looked at each of them. Lena, the scientist who saw patterns in chaos. Marcus, the diplomat who turned words into bridges. Olivia, the soldier who protected without flinching. We show them we're not children, he said. We show them we're something they've never seen before. Lena's eyes lit up. Project Ember. The name hung in the air like a held breath. Project Ember had been classified at the highest level. Buried beneath the lunar regolith in a sealed facility known only as Site Theta, it wasn't a bomb, not a ship, not even a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a proof of concept, a demonstration of humanity's mastery over quantum-entangled energy fields, capable of influencing stellar matter across light years. The theory had been proven in simulations. The hardware had been built in secret. All it needed was authorization. Olivia frowned. Activating Ember is a huge risk. If it fails, we look foolish. If it succeeds too well, they'll see us as a threat. They already see us as a threat, Marcus said. Just not a serious one. Ember changes that. Daniel walked to the center of the room. We don't do this to scare them. We do it to earn respect. Not through words, but through action. Let them see what humanity can do when we're not asking for a seat but claiming our place. The decision wasn't made that night. Protocols had to be followed. Earth's Global Council needed to be consulted, but as the four of them stood in that small room, watching Earth spin silently in the void, they knew the path ahead. The insult had been delivered. Now humanity would answer, not with anger, but with fire. And somewhere deep beneath the moon's surface, engineers like Jake Monroe checked the final systems, unaware that their quiet work would soon light up the galaxy. Back aboard the orbital station Horizon 7, the air felt heavier than before. The insult from the Varelian delegate still echoed in every corridor, every quiet conversation, every glance between Earth's representatives. Daniel Brooks sat alone in the strategy room, staring at a live feed of Earth turning slowly below. Blue oceans, green continents, white swirls of clouds, it looked peaceful from up here. But Daniel knew the truth. Peace was fragile. Respect was harder to earn than victory. Soon the others joined him. General Olivia Ruiz entered first, her boots clicking against the metal floor. She carried a tablet showing defense readiness reports. Lena Foster followed, her eyes tired but sharp, clutching a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Marcus Bell came last, his suit wrinkled from hours of tense meetings with other observer delegations. No one spoke at first. They didn't need to. They all knew what had to be discussed. We can't ignore what happened, Marcus finally said, his voice low. Korath Vex made it clear. Humanity is seen as a joke, a loud, messy child who stumbled into a room full of elders. And if we stay quiet, Olivia added, they'll keep treating us that way. Maybe worse. Some species might even try to block our access to trade lanes or deep space comms. Lena set her cup down and tapped her tablet. There's another angle. Fear. They don't just think we're immature, they're scared of how fast we learn. We went from sending radio signals into space to building warp-capable ships in under 200 years. Most species take thousands of years to reach that point. To them, we're unpredictable. Daniel nodded slowly. Unpredictable means dangerous, and dangerous means they'll either try to control us or remove us. A silence settled over the room. Then Lena leaned forward. What if we show them we're not just fast, but precise? Not reckless, but brilliant? Olivia raised an eyebrow. You're talking about Project Ember. Yes, Lena said. It's ready. The final tests on the quantum entanglement matrix passed last week. Jake and his team confirmed the calibration is stable. We can target a star 50 light-years away and shape its output for exactly 30 seconds. Marcus frowned. But Ember isn't a weapon. It doesn't destroy, it demonstrates. Exactly, Lena said. That's the point. We're not threatening anyone. We're showing what we can do. Not with missiles or armies, but with knowledge, control, and vision. Olivia crossed her arms. It's risky. If it fails, we look like fools trying to bluff our way into respect. If it works too well, the Concordants might see it as an act of aggression. They already insulted us in front of 200 species, Daniel said quietly. If we do nothing, we confirm their view. If we respond with force, we prove their worst fears. But if we respond with something they can't ignore and can't explain with their old assumptions, that changes everything. The group fell silent again, each weighing the choice. Finally, Marcus spoke. I'll draft a message to the Global Council. We need their approval. This isn't just a military or scientific decision. It's a statement about who we are. Over the next 24 hours, messages flew between Horizon 7 and Earth. The Global Council convened an emergency session. Leaders from every continent debated through the night. Some argued for caution. Others said it was time to stop asking for a seat at the table and build their own. In the end, the vote was unanimous. Activate Project Ember. With authorization secured, the real work began. Lena contacted Jake Monroe on the moon. He was young, barely 30, but one of the brightest minds in quantum engineering. He'd helped design Ember's core system from scratch. When Lena told him the plan, he didn't cheer. He just nodded and said, "I'll make sure it's perfect." Deep inside Site Theta, buried beneath layers of lunar rock and shielded by magnetic dampeners, the Ember array hummed to life. It wasn't a single machine, but a network of thousands of emitters, all synced through a quantum core that pulsed with entangled particles. The energy required was immense, drawn from solar collectors spread across the moon's surface and stored in supercapacitors the size of buildings. But humanity had prepared for this moment for years. Back on Horizon 7, Daniel worked with Marcus to craft the message that would accompany the demonstration. It had to be clear, calm, and confident. No anger, no boasting. Just truth. Observe, they decided. One word. Enough to draw attention. Enough to say, "Watch what we can do." Olivia coordinated with Earth's defense grid. Ships were repositioned. Early warning satellites were put on high alert. Not because they expected an attack, but because they knew the galaxy would react. Some species might panic. Others might see opportunity. Earth had to be ready for anything. As the hours passed, tension built not just in space but on Earth itself. News of the Varelian insult had leaked. People gathered in cities, watching the skies, wondering what their leaders would do. Would they apologize? Would they fight? No one knew about Ember, but everyone felt that something was coming. Lena spent most of her time in the comms room, linked directly to Site Theta. She watched data streams scroll across her screen. Energy levels, field stability, targeting coordinates. The star they'd chosen was perfect. A quiet red dwarf named Epsilon 9, far from any inhabited systems, dormant for millions of years, harmless, safe, and visible to nearly every major observatory in the galaxy. Jake's voice came through the comm, calm and steady. "Final sequence loaded. All systems green. We're ready when you are." Lena took a deep breath. "Hold position. We activate on my signal." She looked up and saw Daniel standing in the doorway. He didn't say anything. He just gave her a small nod. That was enough. Down on Earth, in homes and streets and quiet rooms, people paused. They didn't know why, but they felt it. A shift in the air, a quiet before a storm. Children looked up at the night sky. Old men remembered wars they'd survived. Young scientists checked their instruments, sensing something strange in the cosmic background noise. In the Concordance Hall, Korath Vex sat in his chamber, reviewing reports. He felt satisfied. The humans had been put in their place. They would stay quiet now, grateful for even a listening post. He didn't imagine they had the courage or the capability to respond, but humanity had never been about what others imagined. In the silent dark of space, near the edge of the Sol system, a single Earth vessel, the research cruiser Aurora, adjusted its course slightly. Onboard technicians monitored deep space sensors. They weren't looking for enemies. They were waiting for light. And deep beneath the moon's surface, Jake Monroe placed his hand on the activation panel. His finger hovered over the button. He thought of his grandmother, who'd lived through the last Great War. He thought of his little sister who dreamed of flying between stars. He thought of Earth, not as a planet, but as a promise. Then he pressed it. A pulse of energy, invisible to the eye but immense in power, shot out from the moon. It didn't travel through space like light or radio waves. It moved through the quantum fabric itself, faster than anything known. It crossed 50 light years in less than a heartbeat. And far away in the cold void near Epsilon 9, the star stirred. For 30 seconds it burned not with random fire, but with purpose. Its corona twisted, shaped by forces no other species understood. And in that brief moment, the silhouette of Earth, continents, oceans, the curve of its beloved blue sphere appeared. In the heart of the star's glow, every telescope in the galaxy saw it, and no one could look away. The Galactic Concordance, reconvened 3 days after the Epsilon 9 event. This time, the great circular chamber buzzed not with boredom or routine, but with a low, urgent hum of voices from 200 species. Delegates leaned toward their neighbors, sharing datapads, whispering in dozens of languages. At the edge of the hall, the human delegation stood together, Daniel Brooks in front, Lena Foster beside him with her tablet ready, Marcus Bell slightly behind with his hands clasped, and General Olivia Ruiz just outside the official zone, observing like a hawk. Korath Vex had not spoken since the star display. He sat rigid in his seat, his dark eyes fixed on the central podium as if willing the moment to pass without further humiliation. But the moment would not pass. The Lyran delegate's words had planted a seed, and now it was growing. The session opened with a motion from the Anthari, a peaceful, aquatic species known for their patience. They proposed an emergency review of Earth status, not to revoke observer rights but to fast-track full membership. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Full membership meant voting rights, a seat on the Security Synod, and equal standing in all galactic decisions. No species had ever been elevated so quickly. Debate erupted immediately. The Xanthari, still fresh from their tour of Sol space, surprised everyone by supporting the motion. Frelasho stood and spoke plainly. We came expecting a threat. We found a people who showed us their strength without fear, and their knowledge without greed. That is the mark of true civilization. Others followed. The Qatari, usually silent, transmitted a simple message that scrolled across every delegate's screen. Wisdom is not measured in years, but in choices. Even some of the older species, like the moss-skinned Thalorians, nodded in cautious agreement. But not all were convinced. A faction led by the Varelians and 2 other ancient races argued that Earth's demonstration was reckless. They toyed with stellar forces they barely understand, said a gray-robed delegate from the Orlan hegemony. What if they lose control next time? What if a populated system is harmed? Lena stepped forward then, though observers weren't meant to speak. All eyes turned to her. She didn't ask permission. She simply began. We understand those forces better than you think. Project Ember wasn't built in a week. It was tested for 15 years in simulation. Every variable was accounted for. Epsilon 9 was chosen because it posed 0 risk. We didn't act out of pride. We acted because we were told we didn't belong. We simply showed that we do. Her voice was calm, her words clear. No anger, no defensiveness. Just fact. The chamber fell quiet. Daniel took over. We are not asking for special treatment. We are not demanding power. We are offering partnership. Humanity has much to learn, but we also have much to give. Our history is short, yes, but it is full of mistakes we refuse to repeat. We know what it means to stand on the edge of ruin and choose to build instead. He paused, then added, You called us children, but children grow, and sometimes they teach the elders new ways to see the world. Silence held for a long moment. Then slowly the Lyran delegate began to clap. Others joined. First the younger species, then a few of the older ones. Even Vrela Sho gave a single sharp nod of approval. Korath Vex did not move. Behind the scenes, things moved quickly. Marcus met with diplomats from a dozen species, forging quiet alliances. Olivia coordinated with Earth's defense network, ensuring no sudden moves would be misread as aggression. Lena shared non-sensitive data about quantum entanglement fields with trusted scientific envoys, proving Earth's transparency. Jake, still on the moon, prepared a public archive of Project Ember's research, everything except the core activation sequence, to be released if the Concordance agreed to full membership. But not all reactions were peaceful. Far beyond the Sol system, near the outer rim of Xanthari space, a different kind of fleet gathered. Not the official Xanthari peace cruisers, but a splinter group, the Iron Claw, a militant faction that believed younger species should be contained, not welcomed. They saw Earth's display as a direct challenge to the old order, and they intended to answer it. Their ships, 3 jagged black-hulled destroyers, slipped past normal patrols using stolen cloaking tech. Their target wasn't Earth itself. It was Horizon 7. Destroy the station, kill the delegation, and frame it as an accident. Without leaders, Earth's momentum would collapse. Olivia's intelligence network caught wind of the plot too late. The Ironclaw fleet was already inside the outer asteroid belt, moving silently toward lunar orbit. She alerted Daniel immediately. "We can't let them reach the station," she said. "But if we fire first, the Concordants will think we're the aggressors." "Then we don't fire," Daniel replied. "We show them we're smarter." Lena had an idea. The Ember array still has residual charge. Not enough for another star pulse, but enough to create a localized quantum distortion, a temporary blind spot in their sensors. Jake confirmed it was possible. Within minutes, he rerouted power from the lunar solar grid. A soft hum vibrated through Site Theta as the array powered up again, not to shape stars, but to weave a veil of warped space around Horizon 7. As the Iron Claw ships approached, their sensors flickered. Suddenly, the station vanished from their screens. They slowed, confused. Then from the darkness, Earth's defense ships appeared. Not with weapons drawn, but with open comms. "This is General Olivia Ruiz of Earth Unified Defense. You are trespassing in sovereign space. Identify yourselves or be escorted out." The Iron Claw commander hesitated. He'd expected fear, resistance, maybe a fight. Not this calm certainty. His ships were outgunned, outmaneuvered, and now blind. He ordered a retreat. News of the failed attack spread fast. But Earth didn't broadcast it as a victory. Marcus released a simple statement. "An unauthorized vessel approached our station. It was asked to leave. It complied. We hope this incident reminds all parties that trust must be earned through actions, not force." The effect was powerful. Species that had been on the fence now saw Earth not just as capable, but as restrained. Even Korath Vex could not deny it. When the Concordants voted on Earth's membership the next day, the result was overwhelming. 203 votes in favor. Only 7 opposed. Earth was granted full membership with immediate effect. As the gavel fell, Daniel didn't cheer. He simply turned to Lena, Marcus, and Olivia and said, "Now the real work begins." And on the moon, Jake looked up at the stars and whispered, "We did it." But he knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The vote was final. Earth was no longer an observer, no longer a petitioner, no longer a joke. Full membership in the Galactic Concordance meant Earth now had a voice, a vote, and a seat at the center of the great circular chamber, not at the edge, but among equals. The change happened fast. Within hours, human engineers worked alongside alien technicians to install Earth's new delegation pod, shaped like a silver leaf with soft blue lighting. It stood between the Lyran and the Anthari, 2 species that had become quiet allies. Daniel Brooks sat in that seat for the first time during the next session. He wore a simple dark suit, no medals, no symbols of rank, just the small Earth pin on his lapel. Around him, delegates nodded in greeting. Some still watched with caution, but the open hostility was gone. Even Korath Vex did not look his way. The Varelian had resigned his post the night before, citing personal reasons, though everyone knew the truth. His insult had backfired, and his reputation had burned with Epsilon 9's light. The session that day was about deep space resource sharing. A proposal to open new helium-3 mining zones in the outer spiral arms was on the table. In the past, Earth would have listened silently. Now Daniel raised his hand. When called upon, he spoke clearly. "Earth supports the proposal, but we suggest adding a clause 10% of all harvested resources be set aside for emerging species still building their first off-world colonies." The idea was new, unusual, but the Lyran immediately seconded it. Then the Qatari, then even the Thalorians. The amendment passed. After the session, Marcus Bell walked the corridors of the Concordance Hall, not as a guest, but as a peer. He met with diplomats from a dozen worlds, not to beg for favors, but to trade knowledge. Earth's advances in sustainable agriculture for Xanthari water recycling tech, human neural interface designs for Anthari bioharmony protocols. Deals were made not out of need, but mutual respect. Back on Earth, life changed in quieter ways. Children in schools now studied not just Earth's history, but galactic civics. Universities opened new departments in xenolinguistics and interstellar law. Factories that once built weapons now produced components for joint research stations. In Geneva, construction began on the new Earth Concordance Embassy, a building of glass and green steel, shaped like an open hand reaching skyward. General Olivia Ruiz stood on a hill overlooking the site one evening, her uniform jacket open in the warm air. She wasn't in command of a warship or a defense grid at that moment. She was just a woman watching her world grow. Below, workers moved beams into place under the setting sun. Nearby, a group of kids played, pretending to be ambassadors to alien worlds. One little girl held a stick like a data pad and said, "We come in peace, but we also come with really cool science." Olivia smiled. That was the spirit. On the moon, Site Theta was no longer hidden. Project Ember had been declassified, its research shared openly with any species willing to sign peaceful use agreements. Jake Monroe now led a team of human and alien scientists, working together to refine the quantum entanglement field. Not for display, but for real applications. They tested it on dying stars, gently reigniting fusion in systems where life had once thrived. They used it to guide lost comets away from inhabited planets. Ember was no longer a secret weapon. It was a tool of care. Lena Foster visited him often, bringing coffee and updates from Horizon 7. "The Thalorians want to collaborate on a stellar nursery project," she told him one afternoon, as they watched Earth rise over the lunar horizon. "They say your team's calibration method is the cleanest they've ever seen." Jake shrugged, but his eyes shone. "We just wanted to prove we belonged. Now we get to help others belong too." Meanwhile, Daniel, Marcus, Olivia, and Lena met often, not in war rooms or briefing chambers, but in simple places. A cafe on Mars Colony 3, a garden on the orbital habitat Viridia, a quiet beach in Oregon. They talked not just about policy, but about what kind of future they wanted to build. Not one of dominance, but of partnership. Not one of fear, but of shared wonder. One evening, the four of them stood together on that Oregon beach watching the stars come out. The Pacific rolled gently at their feet. The air smelled of salt and pine. No one spoke for a long time. They didn't need to. They had lived through insult, silence, ignition, and reckoning. Now they stood in the calm after the storm. "We did it," Marcus finally said, his voice soft. "No," Daniel replied. "We're doing it. Every day, and it was true. Membership wasn't the end, it was the start of something harder. Trust had to be maintained. Alliances had to be nurtured. Mistakes would be made. But humanity had shown it could rise without falling into arrogance. It could shine without burning others. Far away, in a small system near the galactic rim, another young species watched the archived footage of Epsilon 9. They were insectoid, with large compound eyes and fragile wings. Their world was recovering from its own wars. Their scientists had just cracked warp theory. Their leaders argued about whether to reach out to the Concordance or stay hidden. Then a young student played the recording of Earth's star silhouette for her council. "If they can do this," she said, "maybe we can too." The council fell silent. Then slowly they voted to send a message. A simple one. "We are here. We are listening." And somewhere in the endless dark between stars, another spark began to glow. On Earth, people slept under open skies, safe not because they had the biggest guns, but because they had earned the galaxy's respect. Children dreamed of flying to distant worlds not as conquerors but as friends, and in the quiet hum of cities and farms and labs, humanity moved forward. Not loudly, not boastfully, but with steady, quiet purpose. They had been insulted. They had responded not with rage, but with light, and in doing so they had changed everything. The pulse left the moon without sound, without flash, without warning. It slipped through the quantum weave of the universe like a whisper through a dream. 50 light-years away, near the quiet red dwarf Epsilon 9, space itself seemed to pause. Then the star answered. For 30 seconds, the dull ember of Epsilon 9 blazed with impossible clarity. Its light didn't just brighten, it reshaped. Tendrils of plasma curled and folded under forces no known physics could explain, forming a perfect glowing outline of Earth. Continents rose in fire, oceans shimmered in coronal blue. The curve of the planet glowed like a promise written in starlight. Observatories across the galaxy recorded it. Deep space monitors blinked in alarm. Species that had never paid attention to Sol 3 now stared at their screens in disbelief. On Horizon 7, the humans watched the feed from the Aurora's long-range sensors. Lena held her breath as the image formed. Daniel stood perfectly still. Olivia's hand rested near her sidearm, not out of fear, but readiness. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment as if in prayer. None of them cheered. They didn't need to. The message was sent. Back on Earth, people saw it too. Not with their eyes. Epsilon 9 was too far for naked sight. But through live streams, news alerts, and emergency broadcasts. Scientists scrambled to explain it. Governments issued calm statements. But in homes and streets and quiet rooms, ordinary people felt something shift inside them. For the first time, they weren't just inhabitants of a small blue world. They were part of something vast, bold, and undeniable. In the Galactic Concordance Hall, chaos erupted. Delegates shouted over each other. Some demanded immediate investigation. Others accused Earth of violating galactic non-interference laws. A few sat in stunned silence, unable to process what they'd seen. Korath Vex remained in his seat, his scaled face unreadable, but his claws dug deep into the armrests of his chair. How? He muttered, more to himself than anyone else. How could they do this? No one had an answer. The Varelians had mastered stellar navigation, energy harvesting, even limited time dilation fields. But reshaping a star's corona with such precision? That bordered on myth. And yet the data didn't lie. The shape was unmistakable. It was Earth. Within hours, messages flooded Earth's comms channels. Some were angry. Some were fearful. A few were curious. The Xanthari hegemony sent a terse warning. Explain your actions or face consequences. The gentle Anthari, however, transmitted a simple question. Are you offering a new kind of science? Even the reclusive Qatari, who rarely spoke to outsiders, requested a private dialogue with Earth's delegation. Daniel and Marcus worked through the night, drafting responses. They kept every message calm, clear, and consistent. We did not alter Epsilon 9 to threaten. We did it to show what humanity can achieve when united by purpose, not fear. They refused to apologize. They also refused to boast. They simply stated the truth. Meanwhile, Lena and Jake coordinated from opposite ends of the Sol system. Jake remained at Site Theta, monitoring the Ember Array for any residual feedback. Lena analyzed the galactic reaction in real time. She noticed something important. Many younger species, those who had only recently joined the Concordance, were sharing the footage of Epsilon 9 across their networks. To them, Earth wasn't a threat. It was inspiration. They see us as proof that you don't need 10,000 years of history to matter, Lena told Daniel during a quiet moment. They see us as hope. But not everyone felt that way. General Olivia Ruiz received intelligence from deep cover assets near the Xanthari border. A fleet was mobilizing. Not a full invasion force, just 3 heavy cruisers and a command vessel. Their course was set for the outer edge of Sol space. They weren't attacking. They were testing. They want to see if we'll flinch, Olivia said during a secure briefing. If we back down, they'll assume Ember was a one-time trick. If we stand firm, they might think twice. Daniel nodded. Then we stand firm, but not with guns. With presence. Within 12 hours, Earth's unified space defense repositioned its most advanced ships, not to block the Xanthari, but to escort them. The cruiser Aurora, along with 2 newly commissioned vessels, the Dawn Chaser and the Skyward, moved to intercept the approaching fleet just beyond the Kuiper Belt. They didn't raise shields. They didn't power weapons. They simply appeared on the Xanthari comms channel and said, "Welcome to Sol space. State your purpose." The Xanthari commander, a stern female named Vrela Sho, hesitated. Then she replied, "We seek to understand the event at Epsilon 9. Then follow us," came the reply. Earth has nothing to hide. The Xanthari fleet slowed. They watched as the human ships led them on a slow tour of the system, not to military bases, but to peaceful outposts, a research station orbiting Mars, a solar farm near Mercury, a cultural archive on the Moon. At each stop, human scientists and diplomats greeted them with calm professionalism. No fear, no arrogance, just openness. By the time the Xanthari reached lunar orbit, Vrela Sho requested a direct meeting with Earth's delegation. She met Daniel and Olivia aboard Horizon 7. She studied them carefully, as if trying to see the minds behind the star-shaping feat. "You could have hidden your power," she said. "You could have used it to dominate. But you showed it openly, then invited us in. Why?" "Because respect isn't taken," Daniel replied. "It's earned. And trust isn't demanded. It's given." Vrela Sho didn't smile, her species didn't, but something in her posture softened. "You are not what Korath Vex described." "No," Olivia said. "We're worse. And better." Back in the Concordance Hall, pressure mounted. Species that had once ignored Earth now demanded answers, alliances, even technology sharing. The old guard, led by the Varelians, tried to downplay the event, calling it a clever illusion or natural anomaly. But the evidence was too clear. Too public. Too beautiful. Korath Vex finally rose to speak again. This time his voice lacked its usual certainty. This display, while impressive, does not prove wisdom. Power without restraint is danger. Before anyone could respond, a new voice cut through the chamber. It belonged to a young delegate from the Lyran Collective, a species that had only achieved spaceflight 80 years ago. Then teach them restraint, the Lyran said. Don't mock them for rising. Help them rise well. The words struck a chord. Murmurs of agreement spread. Even some older species nodded. On Earth, people watched the galactic reaction with quiet pride. Children drew pictures of the glowing Earth star. Poets wrote verses about fire and hope. Scientists debated the next steps for Project Ember, not as a weapon, but as a tool for stellar healing, for lighting dark systems, for guiding lost ships home. And deep beneath the moon, Jake Monroe looked at the silent Ember array and smiled. It had done its job, not by destroying but by revealing, not by shouting but by shining. Humanity had been insulted. Now the galaxy was watching.